Hello, welcome to Sky Sweaty Record Review, episode 149. It's the only first listen new music review show hosted by a French professor immediately after leaving the YMCA. So I've been away for 3 weeks. I got married, I had like a honeymoon of sorts, and I'm back. And, you know, I wasn't going to do much when I came back. Like, I wasn't going to do like a catch-up episode. But two bands that I always review both released albums. So I'm actually going to do a double shot today. I'm going to release 2 episodes today. Because why not? I'm back to be home. I'm back to be home. I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to be home. I'm back to be home. That's how we speak now. And so I'm going to actually start with someone who's even more prolific than I am. And that's with Patricia Taxxon. So as you sweaters know, he's been releasing an album just about every month. And in the last 2 weeks, he's released 2 albums. So not only am I going to be reviewing 2 records today. One second, I have to get the windows down. It gets really hot in my car once I start recording. So I'm just going to do that. Hopefully no one's going to... There we go. Here's some bird sounds. Put that down too. Get some Promaya. So he released 2 albums over the last 2 weeks, one soundtrack and one of his straight up albums. And I'm going to focus mostly on the first one that he released called Photo 4. Now this is a weird one to review. And in general, he's a weird guy to review because he's releasing so much music. You know, I've talked about it, and at the end of the year, I'm going to release my taxonomy, which is going to be the sort of greatest hits of Patricia Taxxon from the year. And I'm going to put together all of these different, like the best songs, the best stamps, as I call them, off of every single album. So this one is very atmospheric. For the most part, it seems to be mostly in the realm of vaporwave. And I've talked about it before on this show, but if you've never watched any vaporwave videos or listened to the music, it's quite an interesting art form. Basically just taking 80s sounding music or 80s music and tuning it down and making it feel as though you are trapped in an abandoned mall that's closed but all the lights are on. And that's essentially the feeling of vaporwave. It puts you in this weird sort of meditative, dystopic consumer mindset, which is just excellent. There's multiple tracks on this album that feel that way. In particular, one called Field, I think, is the one that I'm thinking of. One of them even uses an old 80s song and tunes it down, but for the most part it's original, and it has this nice kind of ambient feeling. This is really mostly an ambient album. Like, you know, every album he releases is different, you know. So there was Victory Lap, which was the psychotic, like, mashup, and there's one before that was super personal and intense about his own relationships. This one is mostly an atmosphere, and it is mostly a vaporwave atmosphere. A couple highlights on this one include SCM Proto, which is a really nicely composed song. It feels like there should be vocals on here, but there's not. I would actually suggest maybe getting another vocalist to sing on it. I'd be interested to hear him have someone else sing his songs. Sometimes I feel like his compositions get a little bit, they sound sort of in the same register and the voice in the same way. So maybe if he gave it to like a more talented, you know, I'm not a talented vocalist, but a more talented vocalist than he is, that might be an interesting take. I think that would be a good song for it. But then the album ends on a wicked, wicked high note, and that's the track Please Hold. It's hard to describe this. I'm going to actually suggest we just listen to it now. So I don't have my other computer, so I'm just going to edit this in later. So let's listen to just a little bit of Please Hold. Okay, I hope that was enough. What you heard in there is a lot of vocoder sounds. So there is singing, it's the only song with any lyrics on it, but it's all through the vocoder. And a vocoder has the ability to be highly emotional. And in this track, I would say that's what he does. There's sort of a very rudimentary guitar. I don't think he can play guitar very well. That's my guess, based on the fact that the good guitar work on the next album I'm going to review is done by someone else. A very kind of rudimental guitar, but then some nice drums come in, like a nice drum machine comes in, and on the whole, it has this great ethereal feel to it. And the track is called Please Hold. And it's a nice sort of double take, right? Like it means like please hold as in like, industrial world and you're just waiting and you're on hold. I had to call my trash company today and I was on hold for a long time. And, just please hold and the music that you might hear. And even like music while you're on hold is sort of like vaporwave music, this sort of like, who's playing this? Who wrote this? Where does it come from? Why is it so separate from the human existence that we're living? But then on the other hand, please hold, of course, is a call for intimacy, is a call for closeness. And I think he's playing that game of where he's trying to use the words please hold in both those senses. Now, I think a lot of people who I know, a lot of people who watch my Eric Taxxon videos are significantly younger than I am. So speaking of young, this could be a coincidence. I don't think it is. If you like this song, even if you don't, you must listen to the song Transformer Man by Neil Young. So this came out in 1981, okay? And Neil Young, I don't know what you think about him. He's an amazing genius, a great artist. Much like Eric Taxxon, he kind of refused to just stay in one genre. And he actually released albums in the early 80s that were so different than what his record company wanted that they sued him. Uh-oh, this dude in an orange shirt is coming next to me. That's okay. So the record companies actually sued him because what he was making was so different. And in particular, the album Trans, which has the song Transformer Man, nothing to do with transgender issues, although maybe there is. I haven't actually thought about that. Anyways, the song Transformer Man is entirely with vocoder. And it's funny because you think of Neil Young and you think of guitars and you think of classic rock, but this was after he hung around a lot with the super electronic band Devo, and he just went totally out of left field. And he made the song with a drum machine and a vocoder, and it's extremely emotional. It's maybe his most emotional song. Both of his kids had muscular dystrophy, I believe it is, and he could only communicate with them through a machine. So when he sings through this machine, he's sort of talking about the way that you can use a machine to mediate between yourself and other people. And the same way that it can alienate you, as people felt it did in this music, it can also bring you closer. So I don't know if Eric Taxxon is listening to Transformer Man by Neil Young. Neil Young also lives in the Central Coast of California. There's a lot more similarities there, I think, than differences between them. So just have a listen to that song. I'll put a link to it. It's amazing. You listen to it and be like, what? What? This came out in 1980 from a classic rock guy? Okay, so that's the first album, Photo 4. Then the next one is okay, how do I even say this? This is the kind of sentence where if I tried to say it to my dad, he'd have no idea. He still calls this video show a blog, and he calls my podcast that I do about Star Wars toys my YouTube. So, anyways, the next album is called Arbuckle, and it's the soundtrack to a YouTube fan film. So, a whole bunch of words there that don't necessarily make that much sense. I don't have a lot to say about it because it's a soundtrack, and often soundtracks just are used to serve the narrative that they're talking about. The fan film itself is interesting. It's by this guy, Quinton Reviews. So I've watched a few of his things. It's all about how is Garfield created? There's this weird thing where this generation that came after me and the couple generations that came after me are obsessed with Garfield. And I read Garfield all the time, but it appears to be this real strong attachment and love for Garfield, which I think should actually all go to Calvin and Hobbes, but whatever. But it's an interesting video. It's worth watching. I would actually say don't listen to Eric Taxxon's album independently. Just watch the movie. It's an interesting soundtrack to this sort of take about the nature of loneliness and friendship, and actually how maybe Garfield isn't as desperate and sad as a lot of people like to think it is. For my money, Quinton Reviews did a video about Garfield movies that was actually better than this fan film. But I applaud the fact that these YouTubers and these musicians and everything are trying to go beyond commentary, trying to go beyond just sort of irony and sarcasm and meta stuff, and are actually just trying to make something new. So it's good. You should watch it. You should support it. As far as the soundtrack goes, the last track is definitely the stamp there. It might make it onto my Taxonomy Greatest Hits of Eric Taxxon 2019. It's this last track, I think it's called Garfield and Friends, and it's got a nice sample. It might even be a sample of the Garfield voice. It has that guitar that's clearly not by him, by somebody else. It goes quite well, and it's nice, kind of upbeat, a little bit cheesy, but I think like that's kind of intentional, because I think part of why maybe people are going to Garfield is that it is cheesy, and it's allowing yourself to be free of kind of irony and greatness when you appreciate something that's so simple and frankly stupid. I think Garfield's stupid, but you can read a lot into it and make it seem not stupid. I don't know. Man, but I mean, I loved Garfield, so who am I? So there you go. There's, I'm catching up on Eric Taxxon. Hopefully he won't release another album before I release this video in 10 minutes. But you know, in general, these are quite strong. They're mostly atmospheric. It's not my favorite stuff that he's done, but it's interesting because in the tagline to photo number 4, he refers to it as a delicate album and to touch gently. And I think that's what you should do with all this music. It's just a gentle, nice album. Okay, so I lifted weights. I'm not going to go back, do the elliptical, get to some hippocampus for the next video I'm going to release today. Like I said before, I got a new phone, an iPhone X. I forget if you call it iPhone X, people get mad at you, or if you call it an iPhone 10, people get mad at you. I don't know what it is. So the camera moved. The camera used to be up there, but now the camera's down there. So I'm going to have to change my tagline. There's the camera now.